Welcome to this video about planning for pleasure and mastery. I apologize for the bright lights behind me. Um, Unfortunately, with everything in isolation, I drew the short straw, right? So I get my room to do this in. So I do apologize for the quality of the video. Pleasure and mastery is a CBT concept, and it's really quite simple, right? When we do something pleasurable, it releases an endorphin in our brain and we feel pleasure. We all know what that feels like. Mastery is the same concept, except it's an activity that we may not necessarily enjoy, but at the end, we get a sense of accomplishment, that we've worked hard, that we've accomplished something. So, watching a film we really enjoy is pleasure. Cleaning the garage is maybe mastery. We don't really enjoy it while we're doing it, but at the end, we look and we think, oh, what a fantastic job that was. Both of those release the same chemicals in our brain, which are uplifting. Planning for pleasure and mastery is like scheduling. And people say, well, I already plan, I already schedule. But what we don't realize is that we have a method of planning, which is generally the same method that we have received from our parents. And that method is you don't get your pudding until you eat all of your vegetables. The problem with this is that the vegetables in life never stop. So, what we need to do is look at how we are living or existing and see if we can moderate that so we actually live a better life. So, first, I'm going to slide share. We have a slide that says pleasure versus mastery. Ooh, ooh, that doesn't look good. Oh, there we go. Pleasure versus mastery. Share. Pleasure is anything you enjoy doing. Mastery is anything which gives a sense of achievement. And you can do a very simple exercise to test the to test the concept of everything we do is either uplifting or energizing. There we go. All right. Ugh. Okay. Share. Everything we do is either uplifting or energizing, draining or tiring, or neutral, where we remain at the current state. And if you take a few moments and just write down everything that you've done today, no matter how small, including bathing, getting dressed, and just it doesn't need to be detailed, but just a quick jot down of everything that you've done. And now when you go back next to it, put an arrow up if it's uplifting, an arrow down if it's draining, or an arrow to the side if it's neutral. Now, the point of this is to alternate these activities, right? So you may do a job that's very mundane that you don't like very much, which will be draining. So in your planning, after that job, you choose something that's uplifting. And it still may be work, it still may be something that you don't enjoy per se, but if it has the mastery in it, it still will be uplifting, right? You can also factor in the neutrals, which remain at the current state. But the goal is to alternate these activities in order to boost our mental health. An example of how this works is, say that you're on an airplane and they're giving the safety briefing. And in the safety briefing, they show you the life vest, show you how to fasten it, and they tell you there's a whistle for attention. And they also say, and if you need to top up the air, here's a tube that you can top up the air. Now, if you imagine that you're in the life vest and you're floating in the ocean, and you're floating and you're looking at all of the other people, and you know that you will be saved, so it's not quite so fearful. But after a while, you notice that your life vest is going down. The air is slowly leaking out. So what do? You start topping it up through the tube on the life vest. And that keeps you out of the water, head and shoulders. So the water is about here and you're still quite safe. If the water becomes a bit rougher, you might bob around a little bit, but you're still out of the water with your face and your chest. If you don't catch the fact that the air is draining out slowly, you may not even notice until your chin is in the water. And by that time, whenever you're bobbing around, the water is going up in your mouth and in your nose. Maybe the waves are coming and going over your head. And then you have to try and rescue yourself. The point of planning for pleasure and mastery is to not have it get to that point, to refresh yourself and make yourself resilient enough that it doesn't get to the point where the waves are going over your head. So I have found the best way to do this is either using the CBT handouts, which are a grid, and they're very white and they're very boring. They're broken into hour segments. And what you do is, for a week, you write down what you have done. And next to these activities, you give it 2 scores, a pleasure score and a mastery score. Now, they needn't be the same thing, obviously. Cleaning the garage is not pleasurable, right? Mastery, it is. So the scores will vary. Some things are just meh, right? And that's fine. If you have problems scoring, think of a 5 as being normal, and down to a 0, there's no pleasure at all or no mastery at all. And up to 10 is the most pleasure or mastery you could possibly feel. And that makes it a little bit easier. Of course, those scores might change. You might walk the dogs today. It's a beautiful day. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. The dog is well behaved. And the pleasure may be 9 and the mastery 0. But when you go out tomorrow, it may be raining and lightning and it's dark and the dog is just absolutely impossible. But you do manage to keep it under control. So the pleasure may be 2, but the mastery might be 7 or 8. So they're always changing. The reason you record activities first for a week is the actual activities that you do, is you want to see where you have gaps in your time, how you spend your time, how you group activities, and how you can adapt it to make it more useful to you and your mental health. Usually people see that television takes up a lot of time, that other things take up a lot of time, that playing on the phone, things like that. And there is nothing wrong with that within limitations, right? So what we're trying to do is to plan to get the maximum mental health and the maximum feel good and the maximum productivity. So now, after you have recorded your activities for a week, then you begin planning. The forms look just the same and just as boring. I don't have any to hand to show you at the moment. I suppose I could find one, possibly. New share. See if I can find one. No, I don't think so. Right. But you begin planning using the same form, except you have a predicted mastery and pleasure score, and then you have an actual mastery and pleasure score. And the reason for that is, again, some things can change. You can plan on walking your dog when it's a nice day, and it turns out to be a forecast for bad weather the next 5 days, so you can change your times. Or it could be that something unexpected came up that changed the outcome of your prediction. And that's fine. That will always happen. Sometimes we don't want to do something, so we feel worse while we're doing it. It's absolutely fine. What it's trying to do is to show you a trend and how things are in reality, because it's very easy for us to forget how something was after the fact. So we start planning and scheduling. The forms are very boring. You can write down your appointments. Of course, you can change anything that you like. But part of this video is because people hate these forms so much because they're white and they're boring and it's paperwork, right? It's paperwork. There's an instant aversion to it. So I have found that bullet journaling is an incredibly good alternative to this. And what is a bullet journal? A bullet journal is a method of planning, diarizing, writing things down in books that is completely suited to you. It was invented by Ryder Carroll, a man with autism, who found that diaries just had too much in them and it was too difficult to follow. So he designed a diary that, I don't think that's going to work. He designed a diary that was very simple, black and white. Let's see. As we go through, we can show you that there are so many different types of bullet journals. Some people are incredibly artistic. Some people are very simple. Some people are very messy. This is from a website called Why I Stopped Making My Bullet Journal Pretty. And this is basically what mine looks like, right? At some of these meetings, when we held the meetings in person at the pub, some of the people have bullet journals, which are absolutely works of art. They are so beautiful, but they are artistic, right? And they have time and they enjoy it. I enjoy it also, but I have no talent whatsoever. So I end up more frustrated if I try to make it artistic. Here's a simple black and white one. These 2 pages are called spreads, right? And you can do that also according to whatever you need, right? Activity trackers. Some people use those. This one is for yoga warm-ups. I can't read the bottom one. Some people have month calendars with stickers. That's a key. And that's usually there is some kind of a simplification of the journal. I'm looking for writer Carol's. Right, there we go. There's a year. And this is why some people find it so enjoyable, is that they have actually made these year calendars. And the point of it is that it's combined into one book. So you don't need a date book with a year calendar in it, and another book to write things down in, and another book which is a diary. The point of it is to have one book for everything. Again, there's an artistic version, there's a simple version, again an artistic version, very artistic, simple version, artistic. Oh, where is Writer Carol's? Yeah, naturally, in the first two that I had. So basically, what Writer Carol did was he wrote things down in bullet points, and he had a little coding system that showed if it was an event, a note, or a task. Then after he wrote it down, he would go back in and put it where he needed it to be. And he also had certain symbols for whether or not it was finished, or whether it was in progress, or whether or not he had started it. And this is very clear, very black and white. And I wanted to show you an example of my bullet journals, because you can see that it can be whatever you want it to be. So if I close that, right. So basically my first bullet journal, this was my second bullet journal, right? My first bullet journal had everything in it. It had book lists, it had tasks, it had everything in it, right? Because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. And then I found that there were certain lists like information, my NHS number, the national insurance number, ink cartridge toner numbers, things like that I had to recopy over into the next year, right? So what I did was I made a long-running information journal. And this is from last year, but it has camping information in it, my car mileage, movies watched, decluttering tasks, a list of movies to watch, job information, information about Turkey, because I go to Turkey, Christmas gifts. Every year I write down Christmas gifts. That way I don't duplicate them the next year, because I will forget. Course information, revamping of the utility room, coursework assignments, and also I have a bleeding ghost test, right? Now, what this is bullet journals love pens. They absolutely love pens, but some journals have thinner paper than others. So the pens actually bleed through the pages. So what I decided to do was, as I got a pen, I would test it and see if it bled through. And then I would know what I could use in my normal journal or not, and I wouldn't forget again. So this is my long-running information. So that will span over, who knows? I mean, you can see how many pages I have left, right? I have this many pages left in it, right? It's probably the next 5 years or so, at least. This was my 2019 journal. And it's a planner. I plan my appointments because I have clients during the week, right? So let me find a page. All right. I put in when I have a headache, right? So, for example, this is a week. And then over on this side is my to-do list. Whenever I do a task, I normally tick it off. If I am planning it as a planned activity, I write it in black. Mainly just because I can't see pencil very well, right? It would be much more practical to not mess it up, to write it in pencil. But I write what I've planned in black. I write what I do that wasn't planned in blue. Appointments, sometimes I write in red. I tried doing the page this way, right? I tried doing pages that way. That didn't work very well. I tried using stickers, but I tried keeping, what do we have here? Oh, there we go. I tried putting my to-do list in little circles at the bottom, right? And the point really is you can do what you like. There is no right, there is no wrong. It's purely yours. So I ended up, here I was doing tracking, right? There I was having a week to one page instead of to 2 pages. So I just changed what I was doing as it went on to suit me. It's also a diary. And I tend to keep all my diaries, all my calendars. But I found this wonderful little thing called a sprocket. And a sprocket prints little photo pictures. So for example, I went to see Gary Newman at Butlin's. He had a concert. Most of you probably don't even know who Gary Newman is, right? But I do. And those were the little prizes I won in the coin pusher machines. That's my ticket, right? And every once in a while, instead of having a photo album or my photos on the computers where I don't really see them, I have my photos in my book. Not all the time. There are some people who make it a project to do a photo a day, right? That's from my son's graduation. We went to Hull for his graduation. And what I have done is you'll see that I have washi tape. This is washi tape, right? And what I started doing in the middle of the year last year was I do make month calendars. And in the month calendars, they're scattered throughout the book, right? So what I started doing was in 2020, I put all of these calendars in the front of the book. They all have a bit of washi tape on them to show which calendar it is. And then the week pages match. There you go. So I can find November at a glance as I look through it. And basically, that is the way I do it. You can see it's messy. You can see it's messy, but the advantage is you can do it exactly how you want to, right? You can experiment. It's not important. You needn't buy a bullet journal, right? The reason people buy bullet journals is because the covers are a bit nicer. It's a proper fad now. And you can use anything. You can use a spiral notebook. You can use a sketching notebook. You can use whatever you like. The only reason people buy bullet journals in particular is if you can see it, there are little dots on this paper. And those little dots are bullets, and they help you to draw straight lines, which some of us, myself included, still can't draw straight lines because we line it up on the wrong dots. But it's an important facet for it. That's why people buy the bullet paper. But you can use whatever you want to, particularly at the beginning. You might want to just experiment and see how you would like the layouts to be. There are so many different things you can do with it. And the reason that I like it so much is that instead of that white piece of paper where you plan what you're going to do and you write your planned pleasure and your planned mastery, there's actually enough room to do it here. So when I schedule in an activity, I can write on this side my planned pleasure and planned mastery. And then once it's finished, I can write on this side my actual pleasure and actual mastery, just as I would on those white sheets. But I can doodle around it. I can make it more artistic. The pages themselves, are prettier than 3 pieces of white paper because there are normally 3 pieces. And it makes it a bit more yours. I find that doing these lines and the layouts, for me, is pleasure time. It's quite soothing and relaxing to just draw the lines, to make the calendars, to fill it out, and it is quite nice. There's also doodling tutorials, which you can do online, and I do those sometimes, and just adds that little bit of art. But again, it depends on how particular you are about what it looks like. Normally in the front of your bullet journal, you have an index, and that index shows which page everything is on, because we just use the next page, don't we? So, for example, Zentangle is on page 44. So I find page 44. If I can find page 44, 42, 44. Now, every day, this lovely woman on Pinterest puts out a new one of these Zentangle tutorials. And originally, when I was doing the daily tutorials, I would do it on the page of my diary, right on the applicable page. And to be honest, it looked terrible. It looked very scribbly. So what I started to do was, there usually are 30 or 31 designs, and I started to do them on a 2-page spread so that they were all combined, and it usually looked relatively okay when I was finished, right? Maybe if I doodled a bit better, I would doodle on every page, but I don't. And then, so the first page is usually your index, just so you know that. And the second page is usually called your future log. Now, your future log is because many people don't have their calendars made for December. Okay, so if you know someone's birthday is in December and you don't have a birthdays page, then you can write it in your future log. Then when you do have a calendar made, then you can move it over into the calendar and strike it out. So that's a very helpful thing, right? Particularly since some people, are behind, or they don't have it, they don't know what kind of calendar they're going to make, but all of the dates are in there ready to be used. So I have used up nearly all of my time. Thank you for coming. And there isn't really enough time to get into anything else. I would have taken questions, but I'm thankful I can go. And until next time, and then we will get into more of the nitty gritty of how to plan for the pleasure mastery. But for this week, if you just write down on a piece of paper, a piece of grid paper, what you've done all week, then we can have a look at it next week. Okay, thank you. Bye.